Hello, Locked On Fantasy Football listeners and watchers. It's tough to do a show here talking about fantasy football and the game that we play based on the reality and seriousness of the situation last night in Cincinnati when Bills safety Damar Hamlin had a unfortunate incident there, having a health issue. And we are praying for him and his recovery here on the show. And let's just hope that he can recover. And that's the most important thing right now here as they canceled the game last night, as they should have. And we just have to be thinking about his family and his state here as we go forward. We still have to give you some fantasy football advice here for week number 18. We'll do that here with some waiver wire pickups, but we do that with a heavy heart. And again, our prayers are with Damar Hamlin and his family here as we start the show on Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Again, we're just trying to make sense of what happened last night. Just a routine play, it seemed like. T. Higgins making a catch here for the Bengals, and Damar Hamlin collapsing there, goes into cardiac arrest on the field. So we're just thinking about him and hope he recovers, and just an emotional moment there on the field between the Bills, the Bengals. They made the right decision to cancel the game, and that's a reality that we deal with, that it's just a game here overall, and sometimes things can go differently, and it's a reminder that it's only a game, and there's some bigger things out there, but we still want to bring you a show today here on Locked On Fantasy Football, and we'll do that here. We will focus on the waiver wire here for Week 18, and it will give you some players that you can pick up there to put in your lineups. But we want to put that aside here early in the show and talk about a very difficult situation. Now, I think in general, when we're looking at fantasy football and NFL, these are all secondary things. They're distractions, they're sports, they're things that entertain us and give us a little bit of an escape from week to week here during the fall into the winter. But there's also some players involved and the humanity that comes with it. And you have to think about those things first. And we want to see an exciting football game being played, but everything gets on pause, and deservedly so, when someone's life is in danger or needs to be saved and get the proper medical attention needed right away. And there's a lot of emotions that come with that, and thoughts that flow through everyone out there, because it's not just football where you can be vulnerable, just in life in general. And Damar Hamlin and the situation there just kind of reminded us of that fact there, that look, it was an exciting time. We were getting ready to see the Bengals and Bills have a great game, but again, this is the right decision here. I know all the other things that might be going on in the background, they're irrelevant. They had to make sure that Damar Hamlin was getting the best care possible and thinking about him and putting him first. And I think the players were able to do that. The coaches were able to do that. And ultimately, however the decision came about, the NFL did that as well. So that was the only choice last night. There was no other thoughts to that at all. When you see a player just fighting for his life out there, and you think about his family, his friends, all the people he's helped with his toy drive, and all the people that he left a great impression with at Pitt, and as he plays in the NFL, you saw what kind of a player and person Damar Hamlin is, and that's just a testament to everyone just having your thoughts and prayers with Damar Hamlin, wanting things to be the best possible solution for his life going forward, regardless of what we're thinking about with football. So it's tough to see that happen, and we know we want to get into all the fun of football, but there's a serious side too, just like there is with life, and we got to take a moment to think about that, and more than a few moments, as we saw with the Bengals and Bills. So, do we think about when they're going to make up this game? No, that doesn't matter right now. Do we care about the playoff implications? No, no one cares about all that right now. And really, it's always this way. We should always be worrying about the players and their health on the field and not looking at anything else beyond that. Everything else is secondary. We play the game, we have fun with it with fantasy and betting. But again, we have to remember there's humans out there playing this game and not just guys out there just moving around and looking at us and saying what kind of numbers are we looking for in this game. That's just irrelevant in the big picture. And we want to have fun playing this game, but again, we have to take a moment, be serious, and give you what insights needed here on a very difficult situation for Damar Hamlin, his family, the Bills, the Bengals, coaches, the fans, everyone who was there to see that, and then all of us at home just holding our breath here, knowing that it was very difficult to watch Damar Hamlin needing to get CPR on that field, and then realizing that he had cardiac arrest and has had to go to hospital. So again, everything, just the heart just feels kind of a little empty today, just knowing that someone else out there playing a game that we love and that he loves is out there, and hopefully everything will work out there for the Bills and the Bengals, and they can emotionally get through this, and we'll have some positive results here for them. And that's the most important thing. Again, everything else is secondary, and we just wanted to say that here at the top on Locked On Fantasy Football. But we also know that we're still going to think about fantasy and play it, and just part of the game as well. But I want to take a moment and talk about what happened on the field there in Cincinnati with Damar Hamlin, and again, heartfelt feelings going out there to Damar and his family. All right, we will continue the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football. We will look at the waiver wire. We'll look at running backs, wide receivers, and defenses that you can look at here for your fantasy football teams to improve it and plug and play here for Week 18. We'll also look at quarterbacks and streaming defenses. Today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 6 players. If they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com. And again, that's a daily fantasy sports made easy. So check that out here as we go into Week 18, the final week of the regular season here on Locked On Fantasy Football. And we're breaking that down for you. So we'll have our PrizePicks picks of the week later for you. You just pick it, 2 to 6 players, and they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry there. It's no competing against other players. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch, not just the NFL, but anything with the action going on. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, safe, and fast withdrawals are what you'll get from PrizePicks. And PrizePicks is currently operational in more than 30 states and Canada. So check it out. Get in on PrizePicks. We'll have our PrizePicks picks of the week, our final regular season edition of that here on Friday's show. And thank you for joining us here for Pickup Tuesday on a difficult Tuesday here on the show. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversation on the biggest NFL stories, such as Damar Hamlin. That is the biggest story right now of the season and right now. Plus, you'll get in-depth analysis of the biggest games in the NFL. There are games still this weekend that we're looking at with NFL key predictions every Friday. And then Monday, that's today, local insiders will get all the reports that we need from the Bengals side of things with James Rapine. Cover the weekend here with the game-to-game episodes, and very tough situation there for Locked On Bengals and Locked On Bills, and they've done a great job. So listen to those shows. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's look at the waiver wire here. And again, we'll move on still and think about fantasy football in a different perspective, maybe, that we have maybe all season long with this situation, but we'll still give you the advice you need here. It's a pickup Tuesday, so we're going to focus on the waiver wire. Zack Moss is getting the ball a lot for the Colts. He's been their lead back here the last 3 weeks ahead of Deion Jackson. He hasn't caught the ball, but he does get the matchup against the Texans this week. So that is the best matchup we know for running backs. Travis Etienne and JaMychal Hasty really exploited that last week. So Zack Moss is out there. If he's still there and people look to Deion Jackson more in your leagues, Zack Moss is an easy plug and play there against the Texans this week. The Giants, Brian Dable has said that the Giants will be resting players to some degree. They are locked into the number 6 seed in the NFC. That means Matt Breida should get an opportunity here over Saquon Barkley. I think they'll be careful with Barkley and the health there, knowing his history and knowing that the playoffs are just around the corner. So I think you'd see a lot of Matt Breida in that game, and that's who you could plug and play there. It is okay matchup against the Eagles. They've been leaking a little bit against the run up and down all season, but with the game script possibly being negative with Jalen Hurts coming back and the 2-touchdown spread in favor of the Eagles, I think you look at the potential of Matt Breida catching a lot of passes out of the backfield as well. So Breida is the guy that you can look at as well for a plug and play with Saquon potentially sitting out the entire game against the Eagles. Now, we also heard that Christian McCaffrey is a little bit banged up with the quad injury, so I think the 49ers would err on the side of caution with him, even though they could get the number 1 seed potentially if the Eagles were to lose. That may be less likely now with the Giants resting players. So the 49ers may also be inclined to be careful with McCaffrey and put Jordan Mason in there to lead the backfield, and it's a good matchup against the Cardinals defense, kind of reeling a little bit here. So I do like that situation for Jordan Mason as a plug and play for McCaffrey this week. You also look at the potential of a former Cardinal, Chase Edmonds there. He's now with the Broncos, and he did get active catching passes. His most extensive action behind Latavius Murray. Marlon Mack got hurt in that game for the Broncos against the Chiefs. With the Chargers this week, it's a good matchup. Edmonds, whether he's running the ball, and the Chargers run defense has had some issues this season. They've cleaned it up a little bit in recent weeks, or he's catching the ball in the backfield with a negative game script playing behind the Chargers. There's a good situation for Edmonds to get some key touches again this week in the matchup against Los Angeles as Denver closes a disappointing season offensively there. Chuba Hubbard, Dante Foreman has been getting some run here, but Chuba Hubbard has been the better back overall with his pass catching ability, some burst out of the backfield as a receiver. He gets the Saints this week. The Saints struggling with those type of players. So Chuba Hubbard, if he is still out there, he's someone you can plug and play this week. I also think the Vikings are going to be judicious of the way they use Dalvin Cook in the game against the Bears this week, and the Bears are giving up a lot to running backs. We saw in the last couple of weeks Devin Singletary and James Cook go off. Last week it was both DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, so there should be room for Alexander Madison to get in on that dual fund behind Dalvin Cook. And Cook, again, could see his number scaled back a bit, and the game script should be so positive that I think that the Vikings should give Madison all the work in the second half. And keep in mind, there's a chance Justin Fields may miss this game as well for the Bears. That would, again, really put this matchup heavily in the favor of the Vikings in the season finale. And running back, you can also look at the situation in Arizona on the opposite side of the 49ers. You have a thigh issue that James Conner is battling through. So you have now Keontae Ingram and Corey Clement are the backups. Benjamin no longer there. So I'd say Ingram would get maybe the early down work here as the power back against the 49ers. The 49ers are tough to run on. You have Corey Clement. He's bounced around. We know several teams who think he's more like the pass catching back, but I would still lean towards Ingram because they like him and his upside a little bit more to get the touches in the game against the 49ers. All right, and wide receivers, there's not too much. If we gave up on Treylon Burks with the quarterback situation potentially pivoting to Malik Willis, well, now it has gone to Joshua Dobbs there, and he looked pretty good throwing the ball, I would say. Burks And this passing game had a little bit more life there against the Cowboys because of Dobbs, veteran who's been around with the Steelers. So very sharp, smart player. He's going to get the ball in the hands of the playmakers here. So Treylon Burks, again, the rookie, has to play a key role in this game against the Jaguars. That weak secondary, I don't think they're going to be able to just run and win the game that way with Derrick Henry. They're going to have to put it up in the air a little bit with Dobbs, especially with the Jaguars having some passing success with Trevor Lawrence on the other side. So I think Treylon Burks is definitely going to be involved this week with Dobbs starting again at quarterback. Rashid Shaheed, he looks like the real deal. He seemed like a little bit of a gadget speedster type player, but he's involved in this passing game enough, and he's getting the opportunities. He's clearly stood out as their best number 2 option behind Chris Olave down the stretch. It is the Panthers this week. We'll see if they're careful with J.C. Horn and that wrist injury on the outside, as the Panthers have nothing for which to play in this matchup, as well as the Saints. So Rashid Shaheed should get a little bit more run to see if he's a keeper for a key role next season. Kadarius Toney was the leading Chiefs receiver, and he should be involved quite a bit against the Raiders. The Raiders, I don't think, can cover him. He's a quick guy that can work into open field and make some plays here. So Kadarius Toney looking healthy and looking like a key part of what the Chiefs want to do downfield to stretch the field against the Raiders in the matchup this week. And Jahan Dotson, we do like the fact that he's back with Carson Wentz, but we didn't like the fact that the Commanders' receiving corps struggled last week against the Browns. But this week, they get the Cowboys. The Cowboys have been burned a little bit on the outside. Samuel's been the slot guy. Curtis Samuel, that is. Terry McLaurin could have his hands full a little bit with Trayvon Diggs in coverage. So Jahan Dotson on the outside. Those outside number 2 receivers have done well against the Cowboys. So regardless if it's Carson Wentz or Taylor Heinicke, they go back there. Jahan Dotson has some appeal as a plug and play this week. At streaming defense, we'll cover that in this segment here on the show. The Seahawks are a good play, of course, against the Rams. They had a nice performance against the Jets at home. They're facing the Rams, shorthanded offense here, should get some sacks for potential takeaways against Baker Mayfield. The Chargers defense is playing really well. They get the Broncos, a struggling unit all season long. So Chargers have just been much better now. Joey Bosa's returned to give them a little bit more punch there defensively. The Dolphins will get Mike White with a banged up ribs, so this could be a low-scoring, ugly game between the Dolphins and Jets. If the Dolphins have to start someone other than Teddy Bridgewater in this one, so Dolphins and Jets defenses are at play. I do also like the Colts or the Texans in that matchup there. The Texans could make some plays in that one against Sam Ehlinger. So you look at that matchup for sure. That we look at Colts, Texans. I do like the Colts a little bit better. They're the home team, and they're the better defense overall with DeForest Buckner and Stephon Gilmore. So Colts definitely a playable defense after struggling mightily last few weeks, especially against the Giants there on Sunday. And then the Jaguars playing the Titans. It's Joshua Dobbs, again, that helps a little bit over Malik Willis because he's just going to have a little bit more passing tendencies, but Dobbs can also put the ball up a little bit and maybe create some mistakes. The Jaguars have made some big plays of late. They've had the Tyson Campbell pick 6. They've had that Rayshon Jenkins pick 6 that won the game against the Cowboys. So Jaguars make some big plays on defense. They've been chasing that. They're kind of a big play, youthful defense. They can give up some yards, but they can also make some big plays there for you. All right, so there's a look at that here with your pickups of the week there for week 18. We'll get into our quarterbacks and tight ends that you're going to look at on the waiver wire. We'll do that in our final segment here on Locked On Fantasy Football. I do have to tell you about our betting sponsor here on the show. That is BetOnline. BetOnline has got you covered with more sports betting information, stats, news, analysis as your number one source there. BetOnline.net. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there. It's not just pro football and the college football championship game that's coming up here between Georgia and TCU. There's also basketball going on. Got NBA, college hoops. They've got it all covered there at BetOnline.net, including NHL. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those as well at BetOnline. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting information. Head to the website today, use a mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, it is time to close the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football. We'll look at the quarterbacks and tight ends that you can target this week. Looking at Brock Purdy, good situation. If he's still out there, they're playing the Cardinals this week, so good situation there. If you're getting a little bit risky, you could go David Blau on the other side. He looked pretty good. They're putting up some numbers for the Cardinals last week as their fourth starter in as many weeks. You also look at the potential of a backup situation in Chicago here. So the Bears in a tough spot. So you could see Trevor Siemian working in this week for one Justin Fields, and Trevor Siemian a bit of a revenge game. He was the Vikings backup, so might be putting up some numbers there in the pass game and garbage time, something you could look at for Siemian should he play for Fields. You also look at Andy Dalton, the former Bears backup. Now he's the Saints starter. The Saints are in a good position against the Panthers, and same spot Sam Darnold. You can look at them. Maybe this is a sneaky high-scoring game of the week here with these two teams playing for next year. Darnold does have the weapons with DJ Moore and the rest of the guys there. And Andy Dalton, we know Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, plenty of guys that he can throw to, the tight ends as well. Darnold has also had some success with the tight ends of late, so that matchup is prime for those type of options there. You can also look at Sam Ehlinger. Look, it's not the greatest play, but it's the Texans' run defense. Ehlinger's a running quarterback. They ruled out Nick Foles with the ribs injury. Matt Ryan is not going to be playing. So Sam Ehlinger, probably the starting quarterback. Again, could do some running quite a bit. And we saw Trevor Lawrence do that against the Texans last week. All right. Finally, let's look at the Titans. We're looking at, you have Tyler Conklin feeling it again with Mike White. That was a good matchup against the Seahawks. Conklin came through with 80 receiving yards. So that's not a bad spot there for him to operate against the Dolphins. Albert Okwuegbunam, we'll see about Greg Dulcich and that hamstring injury, but Albert O did score there. Okwuegbunam did put it up there against the Chiefs. So it's a decent matchup against the Chargers. And they've been okay against the tight end, but if he's plugging and playing, and he did have some chemistry there with Russell Wilson filling in. So Albert O, someone you can look at there for Dulcich if he misses another game. And Chig Okonkwo really helped by having a legit quarterback in Joshua Dobbs. That's helpful. And Hunter Henry, we saw Jonnu Smith missed the game, against the Dolphins last week. So Hunter Henry had the position to himself. The Bills are decent against the tight end, but if Henry has the position to himself, that can help here in that matchup this week. So not a lot, again, at tight end or quarterback here at the end of the season, but definitely some options you can look at here if you're playing the streaming game going into week 18. All right, thanks so much for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen day. We're free and available to you on all platforms, and thanks for listening to our thoughts on Damar Hamlin, and hopefully your thoughts are with him too as well. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast, where there's more talk about Damar Hamlin, bringing the local insights you love to the national spotlight with daily conversation with the biggest NFL stories. And Damar Hamlin, again, is the NFL story, and you'll hear a lot of good thoughts about him here on the network. Just a great network of folks that have that in mind about football. And I love being part of it here on Locked On Fantasy Football. Check out Locked On NFL. It's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer for Pickup Tuesday. We'll catch you tomorrow to start breaking down the games of Week 18 on Matchup Wednesday.